Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it for the real deal. They will be back at 8 o'clock to play you out, and the tip jar will be open again, but these guys are really wonderful. I'm so thankful that they were able to come and show your appreciation. And I want to thank everybody here for coming too. I'm Carol Robidoux. I'm publisher of Manchester Inklink. I forgot my tip jar, so note to self. Yeah, but you can all become VIPs. Thank you from the balcony. Anyway, I'm really excited that we have this opportunity to come together as a community. If you didn't notice, I really wanted it to feel like a community gathering with the food, which we'll get into in a second, and with some adult beverages or soft drinks, your preference. By the way, the bar will stay open during the forum, as I mentioned, so feel free to refill. I'm really grateful that our 4 mayoral candidates are here tonight. I think we're fortunate as a community to have 4 people stepping up who want to take that plunge into what we know is a complicated city. So let's have a round of applause just for that. I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors, the Rex Theater, and to Great New Hampshire Restaurants. Tom Boucher stepped right up when he saw that I didn't know how to cook for 300 people, and so he provided terrific refreshments, and I've invited him to just say a couple words because he really is a friend of the Inklink and a champion of the day. So, Tom?
Good evening, everyone. Whoa, that would have been good. I'm Tom Boucher, as she just said. I'm the CEO and owner of Great New Hampshire Restaurants, which is T-Bone's, CJ's Great West Grill, and the Copper Door. I'm going to tell you straight up that I'm a registered Republican. No, you don't have to cheer. You don't have to cheer. I'm going to explain why that's not important. What I'm going to say is not important. It doesn't matter which party you're from. And this is why you're here tonight, to hear from the different candidates. And I will also share that, I've written a lot of op-eds over the year, including Manchester Inklink, which I am a VIP member, by the way. And I've taken a lot of arrows over the years where people will say, why do you think you should have a voice? You own a business. Aren't you gonna irritate the people that you're voicing your opinion on? And my answer is, I would venture to say probably 100% of every single local, state, and federal law impacts our customers, our employees, and our business. So I feel it's just the opposite. I feel like I should have a voice. I feel like I should be engaged because it affects my livelihood and my employees and my business. And I'll share with you that we actually have something called our 3-legged stool approach to decision making in our company, which means every decision we make, whether it's really important or really small, has to be good for the employees, the guests, and the business. That's how we run our company. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to keep your minds open. As I stated at the beginning, I'm a registered Republican, but some of you may or may not know, but I did not vote for Jean Shaheen because at the time, I just didn't vote for her. But I did support her. I did a television ad for her. I've actually supported our current mayor, Craig, as well. Can't vote for her because I don't live in Manchester. I also know former Mayor Bob Baines really well, and I love him. And he's a really good customer at Copper Door. Just don't tell his son that. So I encourage you just to read and watch and listen to what resonates with you, and don't care about what other people think of your vote or what position you take. It's you that decides that, not other people. So I just encourage you to listen to both parties, all the candidates, and support Manchester Inklink. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tom. So we're going to get started, and we're going to try to keep it right on time. Assistant Editor Andy Sylvia will be moderating tonight. The applause-o-meter speaks. Andy's the most popular guy in the room tonight. Andy is going to introduce each candidate. They'll come take the stage. We're going to have 2 hours of Q&As that were created after receiving an overwhelming number of suggestions for questions, so we tried to distill them into topics. We're going to touch on homelessness, housing, public safety, education, and transportation. And then, as time allows, we'll have some Andy's Choice questions, and if we run out of those, we'll open it up to the audience. After the closing remarks, I would hope that you'll stay for one more Pepsi and finish the food so I don't have to take it all home, and greet your neighbors and maybe talk about what you saw and heard tonight. And thank you again. Just thank you so much for showing up, and I hope you all vote on September 19th.
Thank you, boss. All right. Now the time you've waited for, the candidates, and just to remind you, every candidate will get 90 seconds. The lovely Judy Window will let us know when we're getting close to that. As many of you know, I am a soccer referee, so if they go too far beyond 90 seconds, I have my little whistle here, just in case.
I am ashamed to forget, I forgot to mention, our timekeeper for tonight is Judy Window from Diz's Cafe. Hold up your paddle, Judy. She's got a 15-second warning and a stop sign, so that's where the candidates will see when they're 15 seconds away from the doom clock.
Yeah. Please don't throw ping pong balls at our ping pong paddle. Okay, so introducing to the stage. First up, Jay your way. Next up, June Trisciani. Next, Kevin Kavanaugh. And last but not least, Will Stewart. Okay, as Will was the last one to enter, he will be the first one to introduce himself. Will, you have about 90 seconds.
Thank you very much. So this year we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity here in Manchester to create a more resilient, stronger, more vibrant city. But to do that, we are going to have to break out of an old and tired political cycle that has seen the state's political parties treat the mayor's office as a political prize to be won or lost every 2 years. Now, this has had a lot of downsides, and not the least of which is that it leads to some very short-term thinking, which shortchanges the people of Manchester. Because as we all know, and we're going to discuss tonight, we have some very serious challenges facing us as a city. And we need more than political slogans and campaign slogans to solve those. We need a leader with a plan, yes, but we also need a manager with a vision, a plan, and somebody who can get results. Now, professionally, I serve as the executive director of Stay Work Play New Hampshire, a statewide nonprofit whose mission is to attract and retain the next generation workforce. Past roles I've had include the Vice President of Economic Development at the Manchester Chamber. I was a community organizer at NeighborWorks Southern New Hampshire and a news reporter at Hippo Press. I actually also literally wrote the book on the city, writing an insider's guide to Manchester back in 2016. So I do love this city. And I think we have so much potential, and I'm very much looking forward to talking about that tonight. I'm getting the time, so I will stop. Thank you all.
Thank you, Will. Next up is next up is Kevin.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Will. And thank you, other candidates. I'm running because I love this city. I was born and raised here in Manchester. I grew up here. And when I was 19 years old, I started working for the telephone company here. And if anyone told me then I was going to be doing this, I see a couple of people down there that would say there's no way, right? But looking at what I've been through, I've had coaches, I've had teachers, people across the city that have helped me. And they've helped my wife, my kids, my family. And what I want to do right now is give back to the city. It's where I'm from, it's who I am. I just love this city, and I want to give back. I do want to take a minute because I think Joyce Craig deserves a lot of credit. She has been a mayor, an alderman, and a school board member, and she's a great friend. She's given a lot of service to the city, and she deserves that credit. And I'm also honored to have her as a great friend, but also endorsing my candidacy. And in every campaign, I focused on public safety, public education, affordable housing, and opportunity, good paying jobs. And that means everything to me. As a state senator, as an alderman, I've worked with the police and fire, and I've had their backs. I've worked with them, and I'm honored to have the endorsement of the Manchester Police and Fire Department, and I will continue to have their backs as alderman. I guess I have 15 seconds, so I'm going to wrap up. But I'm looking forward tonight. I appreciate everyone being here, and I'm looking forward to a great forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much. June, you're up.
Thank you, Andy. And first off, thank you all for coming tonight. It's so great that we have Inklink in our community to help us pull these events together. So, similar theme, I was born and raised in Manchester. I was raised by a family that valued community service. I'm a former public school teacher. I was a software company executive, a small business owner, and I currently serve as one of your aldermen at large. My goal in being mayor is to really continue to build Manchester into the thriving community that we've become. Manchester is a great place to live, it's a great place to work, but we still have work to do. As alderman at large, I'm in the community every day talking to our friends and neighbors, addressing their concerns and their challenges, and finding ways to address their needs. We are at a critical juncture in Manchester right now, one where we get to choose what we want the future of our city to look like. We do face some tough challenges, and things that we're all aware of is our housing is expensive, and for various reasons, many of our community friends and neighbors are living unhoused. Our streets aren't as safe as we'd like them to be, and we need to keep moving our public schools forward. As mayor, I will work to level the playing field because every member of our community deserves access to a good job that's paying a living wage, a path to home ownership, and a safe community to call home. I have the experience of leading diverse, very large collaborative teams, bringing innovative ideas to the table that will be sustainable and beneficial to our community. We need to prioritize our needs for lowering housing costs, improving public safety, and growing our economy while investing in our schools.
Thank you so much. Okay. Jay, you're up.
Good evening. So we've knocked on 11,000 doors, and I continue to hear from people that they have concerns about homelessness, about making sure that we're able to get criminals off of our streets and protect our cities, about increasing taxes. But with every person that I talk to, they always caveat it. They always tell me that they love our city, they're deeply proud of it, and that the city has a great deal of untapped potential. And I feel that too. My great-great-grandparents immigrated to Manchester from Montreal in 1896 in search of a better life. I came to the city of Manchester in 2006 and fell in love with it when I was working in the mayor's office. And 13 years ago, I stopped drinking. And I got into recovery, and I knew that I wanted to dedicate my life to serving others and helping people. And that's exactly what I've done. I'm an infantry officer in the Army National Guard. I went to work for nonprofits where I help people with addiction, mental health, and homelessness issues. And I know that to be successful in these positions, you have to have a vision, set a plan, and then execute. You have to bring people together. You have to collaborate. You have to focus on the mission, focus on results. That is how we should be governing in City Hall. And that's why yesterday I held a press conference to talk about some solutions to the homeless crisis. And look, we do not have to agree on everything, but we do have to agree that the status quo here can't continue. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Will, Kevin, and June for being here, and for all of you as well, and Andy for moderating.
Thank you. All right. We have 3 questions about homelessness, one of the biggest topics in the election this year. The questions will be going down the row. Since Will was the first to introduce himself, we'll begin with Kevin with the first homelessness question. The question is, the city continues to struggle with homelessness. How will you handle this crisis for the most positive outcome for those who are currently homeless, as well as residents and business owners in Manchester? As mayor, how would you lead on this issue? All 4 candidates will get a chance to answer this question.
Thank you, Andy. You know, homelessness, first of all, people on the street, everyone I know everyone deserves a shelter over their head. In Manchester, it's not just Manchester, it's the state, it's the federal issue. What we've done in Manchester, we've opened up the first one in the state to open up the homeless center. When it was freezing cold out, we were saving lives doing that. I'm very excited about the news that came out yesterday about the national group of saying what we can do to better provide not services, but how to help people in transition, to get them out of homelessness, to get the wraparound services, to get them some kind of housing. And we've hired a homelessness, the director of homelessness initiatives. We hired an overdose director. I know it's not perfect. I talk to people. I've talked to people all over the city, and we do have to do more. There's never a chance to say that we're done and this is what we've got to do. We've got to We've got to adapt and say, okay, this isn't working. Let's move on and try something else. But the biggest thing I think we have to do is make sure we know that these are people's brothers and sisters. And I met someone the other day, and they asked about the homeless in Manchester. We had a great conversation, and their answer was, well, my brother-in-law relapsed. He was sober for 8 months. Now he's back on the street. And it breaks your heart with that. You want to help everyone, but one of the things I want to do is bring people together. I've done that in the state Senate, working across the line and bringing people together. That's how we solve the problem. As a baseball coach, as a football coach, you don't win alone, you win together.
Junior, next.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, homelessness is one of our largest issues. The bottom line is nobody wants to be living out on the streets. And it's not healthy for anybody. It's not healthy for the people that are living out there. It's not healthy for the businesses that are trying to survive and have people in front of their storefronts. I have been working closely with our Director of Homeless Initiatives, Adrienne Boulogne, and we've pulled together a task force, and we've been working on this issue. I'm happy to say that in September, we will be opening our engagement center. This engagement center is going to bring a lot of our nonprofits together. One of the challenges we've had in the past, we haven't been working together as a team. So we're bringing our nonprofits in, we're bringing our faith-based groups in, we're working with people to get them off of the streets and get them the services that they need to survive and to give them that leg up the ladder so that they can start living their best life and that we can get them into housing. We also need more supportive housing. A lot of people aren't ready to just go into housing today. So with that supportive housing that we're going to work on, we can also be able to have the network that people need to survive. It's definitely not going to happen overnight. I am grateful for our latest partnership with the National Alliance, that they're going to be able to help us come up with some plans. Also look at some additional grant funding that might be available to help us continue with this. But I will continue to work with our director. I will continue to get the job done. And yeah, it's going to take time, but we need a strategy, we need a long-term plan, and we need to be able to pivot as the data works with us and we know what we're doing and how to move things forward.
Okay, Jay, you're up.
Thank you. So as I talk to people around the city, this is by far the #1 issue along with public safety. And I think it's had a reverberating impact throughout the entire city. We have to deal with this in a comprehensive approach. It has to be a balanced approach, and it has to be from a bottom-up, working with the entire community. So yesterday I unveiled my plan, and the 3 things that I talked about in that plan were, first, it was enforcement and accountability. We have a lot of business owners in the audience today. We have to make sure that we are enforcing and strengthening the ordinances that are on the books. Our city has to be safe, clean, and inviting for people to come because it's impacting our economy as well. We have to make sure that we are supporting our police and fire and first responders in the budget so that they have the tools and resources necessary to address this. I think we can use that enforcement mechanism as a way to divert people into alternate sentencing so that we can help break that cycle that they're currently in and get off the streets. Then I really think that we do need a lot more communication and coordination with our local, state, and federal partners. One of the things that I talk about with a lot of nonprofits is that they don't feel that there's been enough outreach from the city to address this. And then I think we also have to tackle this by strengthening the systems where people are at their most vulnerable. So when somebody is coming out of hospitals or jails, or more prevention, implementation of prevention programs in our schools. And then, of course, I think housing is obviously essential. I think it needs to be done concurrently with the other steps that I've talked about as well, though. But we have got to get housing to market much more quickly. I know we've talked about the 2,000 units that are coming on. I think we need a better functioning city government to get housing into the market much more quickly than it is.
Okay. All right, Willie, you're up.
Thank you. Yeah, homelessness is the most pressing issue facing the city. I don't think any of us up here will disagree with that. And there are a lot of partners out there working very hard on this issue. State and local government, some federal work, nonprofits, faith-based, even businesses are getting involved. But we don't have a goal as a city as it relates to homelessness. And I think that's step one. We need a goal. And to my mind, the goal should be the functional end of homelessness, which is to say it should be brief, rare, and non-recurring. And once we have that goal and that all the partners who are in this space can agree to that goal, I think it makes it a lot easier to align the sometimes disparate efforts that are taking place to address this on the streets, on the sidewalks, in the parks, and in the shelters. Next, we need more partners, especially in the business community, I think can do more to step up, as can the faith-based community as well. None of us can solve this alone, certainly not the mayor, no matter which of us, it might be. It will take the entire community and all sectors. We need to do a lot better job of sharing data. All of the organizations that are working on this are collecting their own data, but oftentimes it's not shared. There's a lot of, I think, duplication of services, and if the right hand knew what the left hand was doing, I think it would be a lot easier to craft really customized solutions to be able to provide those bespoke solutions to each person's individual circumstances. So finally, we need to do a lot more work upstream to prevent people from falling into homelessness in the first place, because right now, a lot of what we're doing is just putting Band-Aids on the bleed. Thank you.
Okay, June will have our next question as the first person to answer. Building on what we said before, downtown business owners continue to express frustration with safety issues ranging from trash, needles, and human excrement, as well as poor lighting. Talking about your strategies to address this, and what would you do differently than the current mayoral administration?
I think it's not a matter of so much as doing differently, but refocusing our efforts and working on what we have to do. As part of the Manchester Development Corporation Board, we've been having a lot of discussions about our small businesses and the challenges that you're facing in the community. It's difficult as a small business to have to deal with those extra things. And nobody should have to deal with needles or excrement or trash outside of their business every day when they go into open. So one of the things we're looking at is working more closely with DPW, and the parking division is starting to get involved as well, and figuring out ways that we can kind of reallocate our resources and how can we do better at prioritizing where we're cleaning up and what we're doing. This is going to be something that's going to take all of us. Again, it's not going to be done overnight, but it comes with we need more long-term strategic plans. Currently, we do put a lot of Band-Aids on things, and we're not looking at the big picture. So we have to get these groups together. We have to get all of our departments pulling in the right direction, and we've got to be listening to our businesses and addressing their needs as well.
So this is why one of the things that I talk about in my plan is making sure that we are enforcing and strengthening our ordinances. I think, I know that the aldermen were considering a proposed update to a ban on camping within the city, and they had talked about the need to look at ordinances that have been implemented elsewhere when it comes to strengthening the ability of individuals to sit or lie on property. There are ways that we can do this where it doesn't have to be the entire city, but we should focus that specifically in our most sensitive areas, like in our downtown, the economic bleeding heart of our community, and making sure that in these places that we don't have this, that, like I said in my previous statement, that the city is safe, clean, secure. We've got to move this, certainly out of there, but the most important thing here is we've got to break the cycle that we are in. We've got to get these individuals off of the streets. We have to triage it, we have to stabilize them, and we have to transition them into a better life. That's why I talked about yesterday the need to make sure that we are breaking that cycle and ensuring that they have a successful path forward.
Okay. Well, you're up.
Thank you. And yeah, as the former Vice President of Economic Development of the Greater Manchester Chamber and the President and CEO of the Greater Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce, I am very well aware of the challenges that small business faces all across downtown and all across the city. And certainly, having human excrement, trash, people, lying and sleeping in doorways, is an impediment to business. Recognizing, the humanity of the people involved, and I agree with my colleagues here that, we need to do more to address their individual situations. At the same time, as it relates to downtown in particular, and all our sidewalks and our parks, we need to do a lot more to activate, our spaces. when we have events, like the taco tour, like the We Are One festival, this past weekend, we see when you have positive uses in an area, it brings a lot more eyeballs all the time to an area. I'm excited too that of those 2,000 apartments that are going to be coming, the 3/4 of them are going to be close to downtown. That's going to be more people on the streets, on the sidewalks, watching and looking and bringing a more vibrant activity. And when you have more eyeballs and more positive activities, you're going to have less antisocial behavior taking place.
Kevin?
Thank you. First of all, and I agree with that, but I agree with the boots on the ground, the first responders. And they're the ones facing this, the front line of this every day, police and fire. And that's why I'm so proud to work with them and have their endorsement. They chose me to say, hey, we love what you've done to support us, and that's the support I'm going to give them. I can look at the Governor's Economic Reopening Task Force when I was a state senator. Governor Sununu appointed me to that. I worked I love the businesses downtown. Carrie and I are down here at least once or twice a week, but there's businesses everywhere too that we have to help support. And when I was on that Economic Reopening Task Force, we saw the challenges they have. And we have to work together. And I've developed those relationships on the Board of Aldermen in the city as well as the state. I've worked across the aisle to help with that, and I think that shows when the governor appoints me to the Reopening Task Force to help small businesses open. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to some of the small business owners here. We had a forum here after the shutdown of how we can help more. We have to leverage our relationships. We all talk about working together, and I'd be glad to work with everyone to do it. But I really feel like I can bring the relationships that I have in the city and in the state to improve this, because we all have to work together, whether it's the small business owner, the police and firefighters that are dealing with this, and the residents that are enjoying the downtown and all the other small businesses in the city. Thank you.
Next up, we transition to a related topic, housing. One strategy that's been discussed is school and fire impact fees. In case anyone has not heard of those, when new developments come into the city, there are these impact fees on how they would impact the school district or fire department. Occasionally, the planning board waives these fees during the permitting process. Should these fees be waived more often, even when there is an impact? And what are your thoughts on that in regard to addressing the housing in the city?
So I think these kinds of things have to be handled on a case-by-case basis, and it's going to be determined by what level of impact they are having within our community. I think we do have to rapidly get more housing within our communities, and that's housing of all levels. I think we have a missing middle in this community as well, but certainly affordable housing, I think we do have to make sure that we are looking at how can we get these things to market as quickly as possible. So that's certainly something I think we should consider, but I think we can't have a blanket approach to it. It has to be handled on a case-by-case basis.
Well,
I agree. Certainly, looking at things on a case-by-case basis is a good thing, and there are no blanket solutions. I agree with that. I will say that, when it comes to housing and impact fees, and these are fees that, go toward our public schools, go toward, our fire and police and other public safety protection, this is infrastructure for our city that we all need, and everybody has a hand in, paying for that as well, because we all benefit from that. And so I don't think there should be any blanket exemptions, from paying for it. I will say too that, so much of the housing that's being built right now, and we need more, period. Don't get me wrong, but so much of it is market rate, and market rate rents right now are at a premium. So the developers, who are building, they're making lots of money, and we're all part of a community, and we all need to pay our fair share. Not asking anyone to pay any more or any less. Thank you.
Kevin, you're next.
Thank you, Andy. I hear it. I have two brother-in-laws that are contractors, and they deal with it. I was out for a walk yesterday, and someone asked me, he owns 5 buildings. He said, why don't we give some kind of tax breaks if we're trying to upgrade our facilities? But I think that we also have to bring government and developers together. And how do we speed that process? There's a car dealership that I spoke to that it took them 4 months before they get all the permits to be open. That's just too long. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but how do we work together to improve that process to get those businesses open? Whether it's a business, whether it's housing. And my wife's a real estate agent. We see the prices what they are. We have to help developers build. We have to use underused land, and parking lots that we can help develop into housing all over the city. It's a lot of, it's a moving process of what you can do. I also see these developers that we have, two contractors coming in. And there's some things that happened in the past. I worry about these contractors coming into our city. I'm working on an ordinance right now with the solicitor's office and the head of DPW to tighten up those ordinances. So as these contractors coming in, they're going to build proper housing, proper codes, and they're going to hire local. We can do that. We can help our kids do that and build the Manchester that we all want to live in and have our kids live in and stay in. Thank you.
Okay, Andy, for our planning board days together, I could write a dissertation on school and fire impact fees. When I chaired the planning board, we had a lot of challenges with the school and fire impact fees. They're necessary. We have to keep the infrastructure going in our city to move forward. One of the things that I'm happy to say is within, I want to say maybe 6 months ago, as a board, we approved the planning board's proposal to us to actually modify the school and impact fees so they were a little more fair and a little more logical with how they were being applied across the board. This has reduced the number of requests coming before the board to change or reduce them or do away with them altogether. Part of a healthy community, and we do have a lot of market rate coming. We also have about 500 affordable units coming. Every healthy community is built on different levels of housing. A great community and a healthy community is going to be about 1/3 in each area. You're going to have that 1/3 affordable, you're going to have that 1/3 in the middle, and you're going to have that 1/3 market rate. And I know it's hard when you see a lot of market rate apartments approved, but the reality is, with a less than 0.5% vacancy rate in our city and in our state, we have to build whatever we can right now. We're also working on the zoning ordinances. After we did the master plan, we put in some things that we need to change the zoning ordinance as well. That is underway. Hopefully we will have a draft out this fall. And the reality is we need to reduce the red tape, and we need to also use our Housing Affordable Trust money in a better way to encourage more people to build affordable and to help the landlords with the financing to make that happen.
Okay. Now we go to public safety. In many parts of the city, speeding and reckless drivers have become a concern. So far, all the candidates, to my knowledge, support hiring more police officers. But beyond that, how can we make Manchester streets safer neighborhoods for pedestrians and other motorists? Junior, up. Wait, up. Sorry. I apologize. Will's up. Sorry about that.
Thank you. You're right, we only have so many police officers out there. We don't have enough police officers to put on every block, much less every street in the city 24/7. So short of that, and I don't think that's a good idea anyway, even if we had the personnel, we need to do a better job of redesigning our roads. Certainly speeding and crashes was something that I heard a lot about when I was running for alderman for the first time back in 2017, walking up and down Maple and Beach Street. Heard about they called it the Manchester Motor Speedway, and it was like, Frogger sometimes trying to get across to go to the park. Even grown men told me they were hesitant to turn their back to traffic to mow the grass for fear that a car would jump the curb and come up in their front yard, as has happened before. So as a result of those conversations, I was able to once I got into office, be able to bring residents together with the officials from the Department of Public Works, the police and fire departments, and we were able to completely redesign North Maple and North Beach Streets between Bridge and Webster, so that now you only have one vehicular travel lane instead of two. You have a bike lane there, and the effect is slower speeds, and we were able to cut crashes in half. So to answer the question, we need to look at road design, because we're all human beings, and we will drive as the road allows us to. Thank you.
Kevin?
Thank you, Andy. I was part of some of my former fellow aldermen too, were part of increasing the complement to the police department to add by 33. A lot of that, we're still down some positions, but we have to attract and retain throughout the city, not just police department. But we also did some creative things with community health outreach. If someone's in mental health crisis, they'll send those outreach workers instead of a police officer. We can have those police officers patrolling the city, patrolling the streets, and I do like those bike lanes. I had someone tell me they were complaining about the bike lanes when we first did those, and I said, but I got to tell you, the people that live in those streets love it, and that's and the thing we have to do is have our community and when we walk out our door, not to see cars flying down in front of our house. And it was something that was successful, and I think we continue that project throughout the city and look for creative ways to protect pedestrians, protect people on bikes. And I mean, it's tough when you see kids walking to school and people flying by them, but we have to, again, patrol and look at creative ways to slow traffic.
Okay, thank you. Currently, yes, our police department is fully funded. I know it doesn't feel that way, and I know there's times that we're challenged about that. And we are currently down, I believe it's about 22 officers, which makes it difficult for them to do their job. And I think we'd all love to have those patrols in every part of the community. And it's not just, slowing in the North End. It's not just slowing in the center city. It's slowing on the side roads and in the neighborhoods throughout the city. We're not going to be able to have eyes anywhere. I can say that the police department is currently working on a strategic plan that will help them kind of evaluate a little bit more creative ways to do their jobs. It's also going to talk about retaining our employees and being able to hire more employees to cover the gap. Plan New Hampshire recently came to town and worked with the Environmental Justice Group, and one of the things we talked about is it's great to have bike lanes on the north end, but guess what? We need them in the center city where most people are actually using bicycles as their basic mode of transportation. They have to be done safely so that the biking and the walking lanes are protected from traffic, not being used to protect properties from traffic. We have to do this safely, we have to do this across the city, and it's something that we have to look at on the whole.
So I'm a huge runner. I love to go out for runs. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart as well. And I'm probably a little too liberal with my responses to cars when they are going by me with my hand gestures in return for their fast driving. So this is near and dear to my heart. But I think one of the things we have to do is we have to make sure that we are listening to the community. So when things like this are coming to us as aldermen or as mayor, I think we have to make sure that we're listening and responding to the community when they say that we have hotspots in our city where this is occurring. And then I think you sit down with them, you devise a plan forward, you bring in all the relevant department heads, DPW, the community, and you start to come up with creative ways to address this. But I do think that there is a need, particularly in some communities or neighborhoods within the city, having knocked all over the city, I can tell you that there are some spots that I don't like to go back to, but we do it.
Building on the concept of hotspots, Chief Aldenberg has introduced that concept in his plan, having patrol officers at certain parts of the city where crimes are more common. As mayor, how would you make sure that sectors of the city that aren't hotspots feel protected?
Safety is a community issue. It's even not just hotspots, everywhere you go. If you don't feel safe in your community, we should all feel safe in our community, no matter where you go. I think the chief has done a great job. I think we've invested as a city in technology to help them. One thing I think is great too about the Manchester Police, they've increased the training for 40 hours a year. That's an example for every other department in the state. And I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of the chief for implementing that. But again, if you leave your house and you don't feel safe, that's a problem. Everyone deserves to feel safe in the city. And we have a great police force, and I think we can, again, we are down, we increased it, but we still have to hire some police officers. And I think the more we get out there, I think the foot patrols we did downtown, I think the community policing we do, we can continue to look at other ways and creative ways to make sure everyone, whether you're in a dead-end street or a busy Elm Street, that you feel safe when you go out and your family goes out.
Okay, great. The hotspots really are areas that come from data. Our police department over the past year and a half since I've been alderman have been doing an amazing job of tracking data and trying to understand where things are happening in the community. But you're right, it doesn't feel great when you're living in a community outside of the hotspot and your Amazon package gets stolen from your door and you're waiting for a response time. Part of the police's strategic plan, and something we've been talking about on the police advisory board, is how do we become better at addressing everybody's needs? How do we make everybody feel safe? Because when that package gets stolen, it might not feel like a big deal to someone when you call it in, but to the person that ordered that package and was waiting for that, whether it was a gift, whether it was something they needed for work, that's everything to them. And we have to make sure that we're treating everybody, again, across the city equally, and we're addressing the needs and the priority that they come. So we do have, and we will continue to have community policing out there. We will continue to have the bicycle and the walking patrols, and we will pay attention to the hotspots. We have to. That's just where the data is putting us. But as we increase our complement and as we work more toward fulfilling what the rest of the community needs, it's something that the police department will continue to work on. And as mayor, I will make sure that we continue to work at that and that we're addressing everybody's need in the community, not just particular areas.
Jay, you're up.
So I did a ride-along with the police a couple months ago, and our police and first responders, our firefighters, these guys are heroes. And when on that ride-along, we had a major call. There was about 10 or 12 police officers there, and I remember asking, like, hey, what would happen if something happens over here? And he said, you know, we would have to rush back, we would have to make cuts, we would have to make determinations just based on the needs of the incident. That's very scary for our community. So I think certainly we have to fill the complement that we have within our police department because we are short. But look, on a larger level, we have to help create a better climate for our police officers. We have to get criminals, violent criminals, off of our street. So I think for a mayor, the next mayor also has to be a full-throated supporter of fixing our broken PR bail system. I am so tired of hearing from our police and our police that before the ink is dry on their paperwork, that person is already released out onto the street. That is unacceptable. And the mayor has to make sure that they are supporting our police chief and our police and going up to Concord and demanding that these kinds of things be fixed.
Well, you're up.
So given the very limited resources that our law enforcement agencies have, certainly making data-driven decisions is a smart use of resources. I 100% have that approach for law enforcement and across the board as it relates to taxpayer dollars. I will say we have to be careful though when it comes to hotspot policing. I mean, there is a danger of really being neighborhoods, I should say, being over-policed, and often the ones that are over-policed are those that are made up of historically marginalized communities, and we always need to be thinking of that. As it relates to getting, making people in other parts of the city, not the center city, not these pockets of the west side, not downtown, feel safer, I'm going to go back, as similar theme as I talked about downtown. It's activating spaces. It's activating our neighborhood parks. It's encouraging and incentivizing neighbors to get together for block parties. I was, for a number of years, the captain of the Oak Park Neighborhood Watch. And, I can tell you, as part of that, organization, just getting neighbors, to know each other and meet each other on a regular basis, know each other by name, has such a positive effect. And they can look out, and just knowing who your neighbors are will make you feel safer. Knowing, what cars you might recognize on a street or not, to be able to call in suspicious behavior when it's there, so that if you see those porch pirates stealing that Amazon package, you're more likely to call in, if you know that that's your neighbor Jane across the street, as opposed to somebody you've never met. Thank you.
Okay. Now we transition to education. In recent months, the Manchester School District has undertaken an initiative to rebuild or renovate most of the city's public schools. What do you see as the best approach to upgrading and modernizing our school infrastructure over the next several years? June, you're first.
Okay, great. So as a former public school teacher, education is obviously one of my top priorities. As far as what I see what comes back with the reports. We currently have retained a group who is meeting with the community, who's looking at the best use of current schools and where we're at and what we need to do to move them forward. I think it would be irresponsible of me to sit up here and say what I want to see done while we're still waiting for that data to come back. I believe it's next Monday at 5:30. There will be a report given to the Facilities Committee of the school board. And that will kind of give us some of the initial things that they've been finding. But this has been a community project. It's been a facilitated project. And I think, in all fairness to them, I think I'm going to hold off and wait until their report comes back and go from there.
We'll report on that in the Ink Link. Jay next.
So we've seen a significant drop in enrollment in Manchester, about 5,000 students over the last 2 decades. So I'm really excited to see what the results are from the long-term facilities plan that is coming out, because I do think that we need a new footprint here in the city to figure out what our schools should look like moving forward. I think there are a number of things that we need to consider when we're doing that, and we're going to have to reconsider, or consider what redistricting looks like, what the bus routes are going to look like, accessibility, class sizes. So these are all the kinds of things that we have to be taking into account as we do it, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the facilities plan comes, and I'm excited that they're doing it.
As the father of a rising 7th grader at Hillside Middle School, this is very important to me and very personal. I have skin in the game here when it comes to this. And I'll say that every student in Manchester deserves to learn in a 21st century way. That we shouldn't be accepting of these 75-year-old, 100-year-old buildings that we're not investing in and that we're letting, in some cases, fall apart. Like my colleagues, I am looking forward to seeing what this facilities report comes out. I too hesitate to, kind of jump in and make a judgment initially. Let's look at the demographic trends. Let's look at the buildings and see what those needs are. And ultimately, as it relates to individual schools and the prospect of, either creating, one new high school or renovating our existing ones, we need to talk to the community as well. It can't be, just data. It can't be just feeling and emotion. But we need to blend the two and find a solution that's right for Manchester and, more importantly, that's right for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. I graduated public schools in Manchester. My 3 kids graduated public schools here as well. Schools are our community. It's the pride we have. It's everything we do, what we teach. It's what I have, too. I went to Memorial. My kids graduated at Central. I coached football at West. My youngest son went to MST. I love the school system here. And the biggest part of it is that our teachers are a backbone of the schools. They really are. We have to support them. We drop our kids off. We expect our kids to be safe. And the teachers are there to make sure that happens. I think there's a common theme here. I agree with all my colleagues. I can't wait. I don't like the fact sitting up here saying our average school is 75 years old. And I hope whoever comes out of this makes sure that number goes way down. So it's a common theme, and I can't wait to see what that study says too, and really bring people together to make sure we have an impact to how to improve that, or maybe take action on that study. Thank you.
On to question number 8. This one's been a question for a long time. Jay will be answering this one first. Do you believe that the Manchester School District should be an independent government body, like most school districts in New Hampshire, a department of the city government, like in Nashua, or somewhere in between, like now?
One of the things that we saw over the summer when they were considering giving the school board independent taxing authority, independent budgeting authority, and removing the mayor from that, I opposed that. I had strong concerns that what we were going to see is an increase in taxes as a result of it. I think the mayor needs to be on the school board. I think the mayor plays an important role in that, obviously, and when you have a budget that's, or the city's, or the school budget, more than half of the entire budget for the entire city, I think it's essential that the mayor remain involved in those conversations. So I think we have to be really careful moving forward with how we would do anything with schools that would remove the mayor from it, would remove the alderman, those important checks and balances that we currently have. So I would not support a movement like that.
Mayoral?
Thank you. I did vote a couple of months ago to send this issue to the voters in November and let you all decide how Manchester School District might be governed, whether it might be an independent fiscal authority or not. The majority of my colleagues on the board chose not to go that route, so you will not get that choice. But I will say, I think that that prospect does increase accountability to the taxpayers. Because right now, there's really not much accountability when it comes to how much money is being spent on the schools. The way it works, basically, is the school board, every year will ask the alderman for a set amount of money. And we can include whatever amount of money we want in our budget as part of the overall city budget. And ultimately, they have no say in how much money they receive. On the other hand, the aldermen, we give them a number every year, but we have zero say in how that money is spent. So when you're asking, hey, why don't they offer German, in middle schools, or whatever you would like to see for your kids, you ask your school board member, ask your alderman, they'll say it's that person's fault. I mean, to my mind, it's dysfunctional. There's a lack of accountability, and having it would increase. You would have more chances to vote on budgets more often. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Randy. I wish I could have this great counterpoint, but I agree with you. I supported that too, but I think the important part is, just like the question before, how do we improve our schools? As a dad, when you have a 75-year-old school building, on average, right? Could be 125 years old. Give it to the voters. Let the voters. If the voters say no, then we know. But I don't think we should ever be afraid of giving something to the voters, say yes or no. If they say yes, then we hold that school board accountable for how they're going to raise taxes, or if they are, and that's going to be still accounted. They're still going to be held accountable to the charter and everything that goes along with that. So I'm never going to be afraid to give something to the voters and let their voice be heard. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give the counterpoint. On this one, I did vote to receive and file. And one of my main reasons for doing that, or I should say two of them, the first one is when I was voted in as Alderman at Large, I was asked to be seated in the job, and I was asked to work with the community, get the information before I take a vote, and I was asked to take a vote on things. My decision to receive and file was with a lot of thought and with a lot of communication with many other individuals. And the reality is, I am not one for removing every single check and balance. I would love to see the Board of School Committee get a little bit more control and be able to make some decisions on their own. But I think taking the mayor off of the school board, allowing full capacity to bond the city to any amount of money, and further allowing them to break the tax cap at any level was maybe a little bit reckless in our minds. And I think we should have had more discussion around that with the community, and I think we should talk about what parameters make sense. So there is autonomy, but there have to be parameters with that. And I think as we evolve, it's something that I'm definitely still willing to look at and willing to discuss. I just think the timing and the how we came about trying to push that on the ballot so quickly, it just wasn't anything that was ready for prime time.
Okay. Question number 9, we start with Will. Many varsity sports teams at Manchester's public high schools have had to either merge with neighboring schools or drop to lower levels in order to field teams. And while efforts are underway to address this, what are your thoughts on increasing youth sports participation in the city, as well as helping adults and others participate in recreational activities?
Sure, and the merging of teams across the city is a reality. As Jay mentioned, we have seen a declining school population over the decades, and that are trends that have kind of go up and down. But that's the reality that we're up against. I think with regard to getting more kids into varsity sports, eventually, it really starts with creating stronger feeder programs across the city. Having more sports at the elementary school level, at the middle school level, so that we can build up to that at the high school level as well. I think that our Parks and Recreation division here in the city has a role to play to be more active, to getting people, out there playing those types of sports, whether in, city leagues or other leagues that are run by nonprofits here in the city, and to open up those facilities a little bit more, and to actively staff and recruit for these teams as well. And then I think that if you do that, over the years, you will see that varsity participation increase.
Kevin?
Thank you, Andy. When I was playing Mayoral hockey in Manchester, we'd have our banquet, and it'd probably be 350 kids there at the banquet. When my oldest son, Jack, was playing at Mayoral, they ended the rec league and they started travel. So it took a lot of people that could afford any kind of rec hockey out of it, and that's for every sport. And we can go at the lower level. We had to combine, when I was part of the Manchester North board with baseball, Little League, with Hooksett. It's been a tremendous success. They've worked together, and they've had some great success going to the Little League World Series. I can't say it enough. I mean, I'm going to brag here as a dad for a minute. Our daughter, who just left last week, she started playing Division I lacrosse. She graduated, she had an open year, she transferred to a Division I school playing women's lacrosse. The first time she picked up a stick was the Manchester Police Athletic League. That says something. That's the lowest level of the feeder program that you have. We have to continue that of every kid. I remember with Myra, they used to say a kid on ice isn't in hot water. We talk about how do we get kids involved, the community, how do we get parents involved, and I think we can do that with any sports, whether it's basketball, football, soccer, hockey. That is what gets families involved. That's what gets, again, more community pride, and how do we get more people, kids participating.
June?
Okay. It's one of those things when you're talking to sports that we have to look at what are our feeder programs, how are we starting our kids when they're younger. One of the great things about sports in Manchester is you'll find that they work very well as a diversion program to keep kids out of trouble and to engage kids in what they're doing. It doesn't work for every child, but there's a lot of kids that will thrive on that. I've currently been doing a lot of work with Manchester Youth Sports and with the Office of Youth Services and connecting them so that we can understand in working with the district, how do we start those sports younger? How do we get the kids in when they're younger? And how do we create those feeder programs for the school teams as they move on? It's something that's very difficult to do because there's a cost to play sports. The sports are not accessible to every kid in our community, and we have to do a better job with that. There's the Central Little League is working hard on this. South Little League is working hard on this. But the reality is it's a lot of volunteers from the community that are making these programs work. And we have to find a better way to fund it. We have to find a stronger way to work within our, again, the Office of Youth Services, coordinating with the various groups around the city that are offering kids sports. How can we collaborate, get all of them together so that we're all addressing the same needs and we're all able to then create those feeders for the school district? And also, what can we do with the school district to have some of the sports available at the younger levels as well? As, less of a pay to play, but actually have that available for kids who need it.
Jay?
So I played sports all my life, and my brother was the musician in the family, but I played sports. But sports to me are essential, or extracurricular activities in general to me are essential. These are the kinds of things that provide structure in a kid's life. These are the things that allow for them to start building relationships and learn how to communicate. These are the kinds of things that can divert them off a bad path because there's responsibility, there's accountability, and it is, as June said, it could very well be a diversion program for many people. We've got to make sure that we're doing everything in our power, especially at the lower levels as kids. I used to be a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate, and they told me that kids from the ages of 3 to 8, they're learning how to read, and from 8 and beyond, they're reading to learn. If we don't have programs available for kids when they're younger to get acclimated, to start growing some maturity, to start getting or care about their academics because there's a requirement to, we are going to set ourselves up in the future for some real serious problems.
Thank you so much. Okay, coming up next, we're heading to transportation. This one is unofficially sponsored by Boston Regional Airport Director Ted Kitchens. Manchester-Boston Regional Airport is vital to the city and the state's economy, but often New Hampshire residents choose Logan International Airport instead, causing concerns about the airport's viability with large commercial passenger airlines. What can be done to address this problem, and what are your thoughts on what Airport Director Ted Kitchens has done in recent years to address this problem? June, you're up.
First, okay. I lost track, sorry. It was the Ted Kitchens thing. First off, we are the #1 airport. We were just awarded this. We have a great airport. My choice, anytime I fly, is Manchester. It's a lot easier. It might feel like the ticket's a little bit more expensive, but when you look at your time, when you look at everything of trying to get to Boston for a flight, particularly with construction these days, it's a much more viable opportunity. One of the challenges we have and the biggest question we get is why don't we have more airlines flying out of Manchester? Why can't we get them? Because part of it is because we have to have people make sure they're using them. Airlines are a business. They're looking at the market that they're serving. We've been doing a better job, and Ted's been doing an amazing job at the airport, making sure that he's properly marketing and we're getting the word out. Part of the Manchester branding activity that's happening as well is going to focus on, all of the good things happening in Manchester and the fact that we have a really great regional airport with, honestly, you don't have to get to the airport 2 hours ahead when you fly out of Manchester. We have some of the highest end security systems. It is an amazing airport, and I would encourage and ask everybody to become part of the solution and fly out of our airport. Tell your friends to fly out of our airport and make the effort to work with us in improving that, and we'll continue to market it, and we'll continue to work in the region to make sure that everybody's aware of our airport and is using it.
And Kevin, I apologize, you'll go first to the next one. It was the Ted Kitchens effect. Blame Ted, okay? Jay, you're up next.
I had a fantastic conversation with Ted Kitchens a few months ago. I went into his office, and by far the coolest thing I've done on the campaign so far, the most amazing opportunity, we took a drive out onto the runway and showed me where they're doing the updated infrastructure and construction there. But we talked about this issue, and one of the things that we discussed was this is where the mayor can really be a cheerleader for the city. This is where the mayor can really stand up and say, Manchester is an amazing community, we should be flying Manchester, we should be talking about the data, because one of the things that Ted and I went over was the fact that if you're planning out far enough, our prices here in Manchester are just as competitive as they are in Boston. So that's where there's an education process that we could do as the mayor, as people on the board, mayor and aldermen, to say, hey, Manchester is cheap, Manchester is affordable, Manchester it takes 35 seconds. I just drove my wife down to Logan the other day when she had to go to Peru, but one of the things that we talked about was how incredibly efficient, because she flew back through Manchester, but we talked about how much more efficient, how much quicker it was to go through Manchester. So yeah, no, there are some incredible opportunities here in Manchester, and I think it's incumbent upon the mayor to make sure that we are singing the praises of our airport, talking about the incredible things that are within our city and our community, and playing that educational role.
Okay. Well, you're next.
Thank you. Certainly, the mayor should always be a cheerleader for all of our infrastructure and the gem that is MHT. And more education, more marketing, more branding is always a good thing. But really, it comes down to all of us looking in the mirror. I mean, it's a chicken or the egg scenario. Much like the Manchester Transit Authority. We might ask why don't we have more frequent bus service? Why don't we operate on Sundays? Same thing. Why don't we have more airlines at the airport? Why aren't they going to more destinations and to offer more nonstop opportunities? The fact is that it's because we all too often are so quick to drive to Logan. And the airlines are looking at, they see, the credit card numbers and the zip codes that are associated with them of everyone who's buying tickets, and they know that there is a massive percentage of New Hampshire residents, particularly southern New Hampshire residents, who are all too happy, just to drive to Boston. So, we have to look in the mirror and, make those decisions, too, and that will, in turn, in time, lead to more airlines, more options. I remember when I was at the Manchester Chamber a number of years ago, we had an air service development consultant come in and was really talking about this very issue, and he put things in a different perspective that I hadn't thought about before. And we were talking about the lack of connections, or the connections that you have to make from Manchester, and he's like, when you drive to Logan, that's a connection too. Instead of just spending 45 minutes or an hour flying to Baltimore or Chicago to catch another flight, you're just driving your connection down to Boston. Something to think about.
Okay. And Judy, could you give Kevin a few bonus seconds here to make up for my screw up?
I got a lot to say, Andy.
I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right. I agree. Ted, first of all, the airport is an economic engine for this whole southern part of the state, the entire state. And I think a great cheerleader we do have, it should be the mayor, but it's also Ted Kitchens. Ted is phenomenal, and I love the data that he puts out for us with that, about the zip codes of the people driving right past the airport to go to Boston. And it is, that tour through the runway system was really cool. I mean, it would be neat for everyone to see it, but the federal dollars coming in there to improve those runways, it's going to set us up for success. And we have to all do that. I mean, there's an easier way. If you have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to Boston and drive right through Manchester, I think it's a lot easier if you can wake up a half an hour and just get right there, because it is phenomenal how quick you can get in there. The parking's easy. I did sponsor some bills with Ted that in the state Senate that helped Manchester Airport recoup some of the costs that they were losing through Uber and Lyft services. And that's all these different things that's going to help drive that, and that airlines look at to see what they can charge for access fees. I think Ted's doing a great job with the commercial hangars he's bringing in there. And there's a lot of, with the Amazon, you probably saw that with the Amazon.
Yeah.
There was the amount of trailers and planes coming in. We need that. If we lose that, it's going to be something we're all going to look at in the mirror, like you say, and then say, why didn't we support this more? Thank you.
Okay. We're going to go to Jade on the next one here. It's just a fact of life that many people in Manchester work outside of Manchester and come into the city as well. What is your take on public transportation and options for commuters, including commuter rail and the need for possible more parking in the city? Jay, what's your thoughts?
So on commuter rail, I've talked to a number of individuals on this, and we've had long conversations about it. I understand the why. I'm concerned about the how. I have yet to see an instance. My first priority is always going to be for the taxpayer of the city of Manchester. And I have yet to see a plan that shows that that Manchester could not be on the hook for this in the long term. The things that I've seen in the past are that this could be an $800 million project. Is Manchester going to be on the hook for this in the long term with long-term operating costs? I'm concerned about the MBTA and that organization running it as well, because we've seen some of the deficiencies they've had in Massachusetts. So I have a lot of concerns about that, because I'm most concerned about the taxpayer here. But I certainly understand that this is something that we are going to be looking at going into the future. I know that the Executive Council has looked at it a number of times, and the state has as well. So I want to see what's going to happen moving forward into the future, but my priority is going to be first and foremost for the taxpayer here in the city.
Well, you're up.
Thank you. So, like 75% of New Hampshire residents, I do support commercial rail coming up through downtown Manchester and the Manchester Airport. As was alluded to, the Executive Council, though, until we have a new Executive Council, rail is a non-starter for right now. So we're talking as early as it'll be as 2025 before that conversation can even be re-engaged. To my mind, what needs to be done in Manchester is to make Manchester rail ready. We need to be a much more multimodal community, where people have options, through the Manchester Transit Authority, by making the sidewalks better for pedestrians. That's infrastructure, that's transportation infrastructure too. We need more protected bike lanes, to give people those options so that when rail does come, and it eventually will, that we are ready for that to happen. As it relates to parking, the second part of your question, Andy, this is a tough, everybody, I think, I remember sitting in Boston at an economic development smart growth conference a few years ago, and we were given a presentation, and the woman presenting showed a downtown, she's like, bustling downtown, she's like, how many people look like you're downtown? Do you have a lot of people complaining about parking? Everybody raised their hand. She's like, you don't have a parking problem. Then she went to the next slide, there was like this, ghost town, downtown, almost all that was missing was the tumbleweeds. She's like, that town has a parking problem because no one wants to be there. So in Manchester, I think we're doing okay.
Kevin?
Thank you, Andy. That's a great point. It is. I had an office over on the west side of Manchester, and I'd go over Granite Street every morning and see the steady stream of cars coming off the highway. And it drove me crazy. We talk about climate change and what we're doing, how many cars we can pull off the streets. When I was a state senator on the Transportation Committee in Concord, we had this federal money that would study this, see if it was feasible, right? To see if it was something Manchester or the state could handle. It was voted down. I don't understand that. That's when I think Republicans and Democrats have to look each other in the eye and say, why don't we take a look at this? Does it make sense? If it's going to handicap it's going to be on the taxpayers, it's not going to make money. But why are we the biggest municipality in the country that doesn't have it? There's a problem there. When I was on that committee, I worked with over 100 business owners that wanted to look at rail. They want rail. They want people coming from Boston to Manchester, and I think it should go all the way to Concord. But we have to look at it. Don't be afraid to study something or take some federal money to see if it's viable. And I think that's what we should do. The Republicans had control of that committee, and we talked about it. We were going forward. At the last minute, because of politics, they shot it down. That's unacceptable, and I think that hurts the taxpayers in the entire state.
June?
I think probably one of the biggest mistakes that I will call the state out for was stopping the study of rail. When we stopped that study, we pretty much cut it off, and we now are going to have no idea what it's really going to cost and what the real implications are going to be. As someone that used to drive to Boston and commute to Boston on a regular basis, we need rail. We also need bus options. We don't have any options out of Manchester, New Hampshire to get to Boston, and it's not just for work, it's for travel. It would be great to be able to hop a bus, go to Boston, see a show, hop a bus, come back home. We don't have that option. As far as I know one of the concerns that was voiced by some people is, people will leave the city because of that. Well, people will leave the city because we don't have that. So not having multimodal transportation, not having these options are what are causing some of our younger generations to leave the city. We need to provide those options because guess what? You can work in Boston and it's very desirable to live in Manchester, New Hampshire, to be close to everything else on your weekends and not have to worry about that commute. It's more environmentally friendly. And when it comes to parking, I will challenge everybody right now, we do not have a parking problem in Manchester. On the taco tour, we brought 20,000 people to this city. And guess what? There was not one complaint after that people could not find parking to enjoy the day.
Next up here, Manchester is the most diverse city in New Hampshire. What can the city do to make sure that all people feel that they have a seat at the table and that all voices are heard? Will, you're up.
Thank you. Manchester is the most diverse city in the state and in northern New England. I think that's something to be proud of. It certainly makes us stronger as a city and a community. We need to embrace that, as a strength and not as a challenge. To my mind, to make Manchester a more welcoming place to people of color, to young people of color in particular, and in historically marginalized communities. I think it starts, with stating some facts that sometimes those of us who are white are a little uncomfortable saying. And one is that structural racism does play a role here in the city, that we are not immune to that here in Manchester. And I think starting from that frame, is the start. And I think looking at everything we do as a city, through that lens is a place to start as well. And that will help our decision-making processes on so many levels that will ultimately play out into making the city more welcoming and inclusive to people, not just to want to move here, but to stay here as well. Because at Stay Work Play, we're all about the attraction and retention of young people, and nothing, breaks my heart more than to hear people say, yeah, we moved here, but we just couldn't find community. We didn't feel comfortable. We couldn't find, somebody to cut my hair, and so, we're leaving, to go back to the city or back where we're from. So, we need all the people we can get, as a city, so we need to do all we can to be more welcoming and inclusive. Thank you.
Kevin? Thank you, Andy. Our three kids went to Central High School, and we loved that diversity. I think it's the best high school in the state for diversity. I really do. One thing I think we should always do, what I've always done as a coach, I don't care where you're from, I don't care what you look like, everyone gets to be part of the team. What I did as a labor leader, we negotiate contracts for everyone. We've got to include everyone to help everyone to be welcome in the community. And we've got to do that from our welcoming centers, from our schools to our boards, everything we can to help communities to embrace what we have in Manchester. I think everyone from Manchester, at some point, our families came to here. And we stayed because we loved it, because we felt welcome. We can continue that, and we have to continue that with diversity. And I think Central speaks to that, but we have to expand it and do everything we can to make everyone feel welcome. June?
Okay, great. Absolutely. This is definitely a citywide issue, and one of the things that I will tell you we're not very good at today is looking at every decision we make through a lens of equity. We do something in one part of the community and we ignore the rest. We solved some traffic challenges on the north end, we ignored the center city part of the community and didn't solve it there. We've been working on a few things now with trying to solve transportation issues, trying to solve safety, looking at it. But one other thing that I will tell you we have to do better as a community, we have to recruit our more minority populations to actually serve on boards and let their voices be heard. People don't always know that these opportunities exist, and we need to do a better job of telling them that they exist. We need to do a better job of recruiting those people. I'm happy to say when I was on the planning board, we started to build a more diverse planning board. We started to bring younger members in. We started to bring people in of different backgrounds, and that's part of what has to get us and has to help us move forward. So it's on us to do this as well. We need to recruit more diverse teachers. We need to recruit more diverse employees so that our younger generations are also seeing people like them in the classroom and seeing people like them in the community. And we have to be able to continue to work and to continue to move that forward.
Jay?
So, mi esposa Verónica es de Perú y hablamos español en la casa. Pero hay gente en esta ciudad que se siente abandonada. So my wife is from Peru, her name's Veronica. There are people in this city that feel left out. I think before we can talk about what we think the solutions are for our community, we have to listen. You know, one of the things that I've learned, one of the most important aspects of leadership is listening. So as I've talked to people who are in different communities within this city, the first thing that always rings in my ear is when my wife tells me that tiene que ser un hombre de acción, no palabras. You have to be a man of action, not words. You have to sit down, you have to listen, and you have to take from them what they are looking for this community, so that when we reach out, we're reaching out with ideas that are brought from communities that may feel disadvantaged within our community. So to me, the very first thing is to sit down on a couch, grab a cup of coffee, and listen. And then from there, we can build a response as a city to better meet the needs of everybody in our community.
Next up, New Hampshire has the second highest property taxes in the United States, and recently there was concerns at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen about property reevaluations by the Board of Assessors. As mayor, what would you do to lower taxes without impacting city services that city residents may also require? Kevin, you're first.
Thank you, Andy. I do want to back up for 1 second, though. One of the ordinance changes we worked on for the pre-qualification, we are working on minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and local hires in that ordinance to get people that are local and minorities to get those contracts with local contractors. As a mayor, I will always have a tax cap compliant budget. I think we all have to know, first of all, I know where it's coming from. We get our tax bill, we got to pay it. We have to respect where it's coming from. We have to look at resources. We have to look at what we can do. One of the things I did probably a year and a half ago, we went up to Bethlehem, New Hampshire, and there's a landfill up there, and what they're doing is capturing the methane that's being discharged into the environment. They're powering vehicles with it. They're heating homes with it. We can do something with that landfill we have here. How do we do that? And there's the technology there to bring it here. Would that help reduce cost? I think it would. Could we have more solar arrays? We worked hard to have the solar array in the landfill here, and we could add more to the buildings we have here. The biggest thing we have to know is that when you're putting a budget together, it's going to affect people's wallets. And that's what you always have to look at. You have to respect that. You have to know that in this time of increased inflation, we have to do everything we can, look at everything we can to reduce costs for the city residents.
June?
Thank you. So I think one of the initial things, it's probably important to know the mayor legally has to prepare a tax cap budget. It's the alderman that can modify that and override it. One of the things that we have to do, and as mayor, I will build a stronger relationship with our state reps and with our state senators with regular discussions on what do we need to do and what do we need them to fight for in Concord for the residents of Manchester. The reality is the state does downshift a lot of costs to the city, and they're costs that we have to pay. It's not an optional thing, so we have to work harder to make sure that the state is spending money wisely, and that the state's also keeping in mind the property taxpayers of the of the state. One of the very strange things is we are, as a state, funded and solely operated by property taxes. And when the state level is reducing corporate taxes and reducing business taxes, those costs have to come from somewhere else. So it's defunding our schools, it's defunding our communities, and it's something that we have to keep a close eye on. And I think that it's definitely in lockstep with the state. It's something that, as mayor, I will have to work with them and build those relationships so that we can keep that from happening.
Jay?
So we have seen repeated tax increases and repeated tax overrides or tax cap overrides in this city. We've been spending our federal dollars, our one-time federal dollars on long-term funds. The problem right now that we're going to face, the next mayor is going to have, is that money is going to dry up. So there's a ticking time bomb on our hands right now. The next mayor is going to have the courage to say no. My question to you all is, when do you, the taxpayer, get a break? When are we going to treat you guys, when are we going to give you guys the break that you deserve? So I think there are a number of things that we need to do. We need to make sure that we are prioritizing our spending, that we are looking at the dollars we are spending and demanding accountability and results for the dollars that are being spent. So asking what the results are from that program. If it's not meeting results, we should eliminate it. We should make sure that if there are things that the city is doing that could be done for cheaper in the private sector, then we should look to put that out to bid. Make sure that we're getting the same quality, but that it's going to be cheaper as a result. We should look at the healthcare costs that are in our city. We have the Smart Shopper for our city employees. We should be making sure that we are educating people on that use of that Smart Shopper, because they'll get a dividend for going with a lower cost but same quality option, and then the city saves money on that as well. I think when contracts are coming up, we need to make sure that our city employees are getting a fair wage, are getting fair benefits, but at the same time, we're not going to put the tax cap in jeopardy. We need to make sure that we are respecting you all, the taxpayer in the city of Manchester.
Will?
It is about respect. It's about respect for the taxpayers, both in the money that we all pay in our bills twice a year, and about the services that we expect and demand, from the roads we drive on to the schools we send our kids to. We want those services there. And if they're not, we're going to hear about it, I know. So it's, budgets every year, as they say, it's all about priorities and a community's priorities. What do we value most? What do we want to spend our money on? I will say that, when it comes to making those decisions, certainly we all want to be as efficient as we can be. And I think, we generally run pretty lean, here in Manchester and across New Hampshire. We're lucky to have so many nonprofit partners that, kind of pick up the slack, that in other cities and other states, might be funded by government. So I think we start from a pretty good place here. We can always, look for those efficiencies, use those data-driven metrics, to be able to make more smarter decisions. But it's not just looking, I look at things a little bit more holistically. Certainly property taxes are high, since we have no sales or income tax here in New Hampshire. So we always have to keep an eye on that, but that's just one cost, that we pay, whether directly if we're property owners or indirectly if we're renters. They're paying these things too, just a little bit more indirectly, keeping that in mind in the cost of rents that are going up. But as Jay alluded to, healthcare costs, for the city, are high. I think a good investment, and again, an investment is something that you get a return on, would be a healthcare officer that could help us bring down those costs. Also looking at things like community power, that could help us aggregate our buying power here in the city and lower those costs as well. Thank you.
Okay. Coming up next, New Hampshire has for many years one of the oldest populations in the country. What strategies are we missing to reverse that trend and attract and retain more young professionals in Manchester? Yeah.
Sorry. Just the ball moves so fast, Andy. I think one of the main things is we need to solve that missing middle housing. Right now, our young professionals can't afford to live in our city. We don't have the concept of starter homes anymore. That American dream of owning a home for everybody is missing. And we don't have that level of housing. So whether it's bringing more condos to the community, bringing more townhouses, but creating those opportunities for our younger generation to actually be able to afford a home and to be able to live here. We've got the jobs coming in. We've got the whole biotech sector down in the mill yard. The jobs aren't the issue. It's really finding that housing and getting those levels that people can afford and people can stay. It's also programming and creating things in the community that want people to stay. I continue to follow and work with the Manchester Young Professionals. We have a large group of people that want to be here. We just have to make it more affordable, and we have to create the opportunities so they can stay here, because personally, I want to see the younger generation in Manchester. I want to see them being able to step up and support us and work on our boards, work on our commissions. I want to see them run for office, and we've got to find ways to make that attainable to all.
Jay?
So I think workforce housing is certainly a huge piece of it, but I think it's the climate and the culture in the city as well, and making sure that this is an inviting place to be. I worry when I talk to business owners who have seen a decline in people going into their restaurants and bars on the weekends because they're worried about their own safety here in the city, or they're worried about the homeless crisis that's here. I think it's incumbent upon us to make Manchester as attractive and inviting as possible, and I think that starts with us by by making sure that we are addressing the quality of life here and the quality of life issues here in the city. And I think we should make sure that we are also attracting businesses into the city, that we're attracting great places like this into the city, because that's going to attract younger people as well. But I think it starts with those quality of life issues, and I think it really has a ripple in the pond effect after that from everywhere else. When I hear things like Manch Vegas or Manchganistan, like that stuff is insidious. That gets into a city's psyche. That bleeds into the minds of people from around the state, and that's wrong. So that's incumbent upon us to fix some of the quality of life issues that we have so we can attract more people into the city.
Will?
We don't have a problem attracting people into this city. I'll disagree with you there. What we have a problem is, getting them, anchored here. And that comes down to housing. Housing is the number one issue facing young people in Manchester. At Stay Work Play, I talk to young people all the time and those who want to employ them. And they say that they like the quality of life here. They like the options down on Elm Street, but they just can't afford to live here. I mean, there are people who can pay $2,000 plus a month for an apartment who can't find one. So what hope is there for somebody who's just starting out early in their career? They're making less than their older peers. This is New Hampshire, where we have the highest average student debt, so they're probably paying a few $100 of that every month. Our public transportation isn't that great, so you have to have a car. There's another few $100. And then when it comes to rent, that's $2,000 plus. Good luck. I almost feel guilty sometimes touting how great Manchester is, to live, work, and raise a family. But it's like ... if you can afford it. So housing is the place to start. Rental housing starting, the rent is too damn high, as the joke goes. It's true. And I agree with Alderman Trisciani. We need more starter house options to give those people that toehold into home ownership. But there are other issues too. I mentioned public transportation. We need a much better and much more robust system to give people those options so they don't have to have a car if they don't want to. And increasingly what it comes down to, and Stay Work Play just did a survey on this across the state, is childcare as well. It's hard to raise a family if you can't have childcare.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Andy. I agree. Housing. If you want to bring down rates, you've got to build, you've got to help. You have builders that are willing to work with the city and speed up that process. One thing we haven't talked about is reproductive care. There's young families that are looking at the attack we have in the state. I fought against that in the Senate, and I'll fight against it as mayor in New Hampshire. People are looking at that in the future, and if they're not going to have the care they can with reproductive care, they're going to move out of the state. So we have to keep that fight going. You look at the young families, what do they always talk about? Schools and education. We've talked about it earlier. We can't have 75-year-old buildings. We have to look at that. Thank you. I do also look at childcare, and I think of the percentage of vacancies we have in the city, roughly around 30%. Why can't we hire 10 daycare workers and let city employees kind of use that and bring them in? That's a great way to attract people, young people, and retain people. We can look at creative ways to do things to help bring people here, and also, but I can't say enough, if we're going to bring down rents, if we're going to attract people, they've got to be able to afford here. It's housing.
Okay. We're actually going a little bit ahead of schedule, so we may have time for some audience questions tonight. But right now, there's one question that I'd like to personally ask. I believe this is the first time I've worn a suit since I covered the Manchester Monarchs. So I have a personal question for all the candidates here. What ideas do you have to bring back a professional minor league hockey team to Manchester? Jay, you're up.
So this, again, I think is where we should be a cheerleader for the city, where we can play a role. I mean, nobody is ever going to ignore the phone call from a mayor. I think we need to make sure that we are doing outreach to, whether it's minor league hockey, whatever the case may be for our city. But I think we need to talk about how we can make it easier for them to come back, the kinds of things that they need. So sitting down, having that conversation and finding a way to get to yes. What would it take to attract them to our city, and then extolling the virtues of Manchester and making sure that they know that they're going to have a willing partner here in the city, and that they're going to be welcomed. There's going to be people like Andy right there on the first night. But I think it's sitting down, having that conversation, and finding a way to get to yes.
Will, you're up.
certainly having those conversations and being a cheerleader is important and needs to happen. But look, first and foremost, professional hockey teams, they're businesses. And businesses respond to customers spending money and putting butts in chairs. That's what it comes down to. So, I think one of the reasons, we lost the Monarchs, first as an AHL team, and then when they, kind of downgraded into the ECHL, and then they finally left town, is what you saw was less butts in chairs year over year over year. So if we want to get hockey back, we need to demonstrate and show these owners that we can fill that arena, that we can make them money. And I think one way of doing that is to support our other, local minor league team, which is the Fisher Cats. And again, right, if we can show that we can fill that stadium game after game after game, I think we're going to be a lot more attractive to minor league hockey and other minor league sports. We'll look around and say, this is a town that appreciates these things and will come out. But we have to show it. We can't just say we want it. We have to demonstrate it.
Kevin?
Thank you, Andy. When the Monarchs came to town, I had season tickets for the first 5 years, and it was phenomenal. Talk about civic pride and going downtown, and every game they had the amount of people that were at the game, and so many times they were sold out at 10,000 or over 9,000. And that slowly declined, and again, just like the airport, if we use it, build it and they will come, right? Look at the partnership we have with the Fisher Cats. We had to invest money last year with the vote, and that was a tough vote for a lot of people, and I don't even know how everyone voted here, but I was supportive of it. We have to show partnerships with these local leaders in the professional sports teams. And I think we can do that. I think we see the success, we can show them the success we have with the Monarchs, and the ability to bring competitive hockey back, because Manchester is a hockey town. And it'd be great to bring them back, but I think it is important that we show everyone that we have pride in the city, that we want to bring professional sports here, and it's a great thing to have, and it's great for kids watching that too. They had the sports teams that would come in and give you cheap tickets for a team coming in. Talk about getting a kid involved in a sport and getting them saying, hey, I want to be out there sometime. So I would love to see them back, and we have to work together in a partnership to do that.
June?
Thank you. I think this is one issue that we all absolutely agree on. We need to get out and we need to recruit and we need to talk about Manchester and get these teams back here. Our partnership with the Fisher Cats is not only great from the Fisher Cats level, but it's phenomenal from the city level. When a city has the vibrant baseball team, when we bring back hockey, when we have these teams, these are great things that make people want to be in Manchester and make people want to come to Manchester. It's just going to be a full-on, we're going to have to do the chicken and egg again. We're going to have to recruit the teams. We're going to have to talk to them. We're going to have to get serious about it and find ways to fill those seats at the arena and bring hockey back.
Okay. The Monarchs are at SNH. We're at SNHU Arena, as you all know. And speaking of that, there's about one event per month there, excluding any high school or other events from colleges. What would you do to get more events at SNH Arena as well as more events in the downtown? Will, you're up first.
Thank you. At the risk of repeating myself a little bit, I think it's demonstrating to, in this case, show promoters and entertainment promoters that Manchester is a city that will come out and likes to have fun. We have to be able to demonstrate that, give that proof of concept, to the concerts we do have, even if it is only once a month. We have to go out and fill that arena. And I think, people will look at that, they'll look at ticket sales, they'll look at concession sales and say, okay, people are coming out, we can add another show, and that just makes us more attractive over time. And, like really does attract like. And I think it's the same thing with community events that we see downtown. I'll mention the taco tour again because that's a great, perfect example. When we have so many people coming downtown, it demonstrates proof of concept right there that people crave this type of interaction. They want to get out, they want to have fun. And I think that by seeing that, demonstrating and working with others to make that possible in a number of other different venues is only going to serve, success begets success. Thank you.
Yes, again, it's partnerships. We have to show that we're willing to work with people, with businesses, to bring people in. And the businesses that come in, the businesses that we have downtown all over the city really make out with that. When we had I think it was the Elite Eight, the men's hockey tournament, it's such an excitement it brings to the whole area. And it's something we can keep on looking at. You can look at, one of the best things I saw when it was the Disney show coming, and you saw all these kids walking up with their pink costumes, and it's just some great civic pride again. And I think it's very similar, Andy. It's kind of the same answer, but it's just partnership. And how do we cheerlead for the city, and how do we get people here? I will talk about one thing we had in the Senate about statewide. If someone was going to rent a hotel room, the local town could have an ordinance to take $5 of that, charge that, and put that back to any fund that we have in the city. Manchester it would be great for Manchester. How many people come in and use those hotels? It was voted down. And again, we've got to look at different ways. Just because it's a partisan issue, we got to look to work together how we can do that. If the city wants to say we want to charge that fee, then we're going to do it, and we can put it to other issues to bring in, whether it's bringing teams in or for local youth sports teams.
June?
Great, thanks. I think part of it is looking at our regional competition. We see this with arenas and events. We see this here at the Rex. We see it at the Palace Theater. There's a lot of competition to bring entertainment and to bring groups to the city, and that's something that we need to I personally need to understand that level of competition a little bit better and see what we can do to pivot and try to make Manchester, the SNU Arena more desirable for events. I think when it comes to the downtown events, where, our Economic Development Office has been doing a great job, Parks and Recs has been doing a great job with movies in the park, concerts in the park, the taco tour, the holiday parade, all of the different things that we do, but unfortunately we need to build more public-private partnerships to make that happen. Trying to run those as a city is a difficult task. It takes a lot of resources, but if we can continue to build the partnerships, we can continue to support the events. I don't think there's anybody that would say no to another, great event like a taco tour downtown. We've just got to build the partners, and we've got to work together to make that happen.
Jake?
Yeah, so as a music fan myself, it breaks my heart if you have to travel, up to the Lakes region to have to go see a concert when that should be right here. And we should be doing everything in our power to do that. I think we do have, I've had a number of really great conversations with Eric and Jody in the economic department, and I think they're doing a fantastic job. And when I talk to businesses around the city, they continue to tell me how great they're doing as well. I think we do need to utilize both our economic development office, which is there, two individuals who are deeply respected and doing a great job in our community to build those collaborative partnerships within the city to make sure that we're able to promote, to market, to bring people in, because we're right. At the end of the day, this is a supply and demand conversation. This is an economics conversation for the entities that may want to be coming into the city of Manchester, and we have to make it worth their while. But we as the city can get together and show what Manchester is all about and have that pride in our community to show up for these events.
And that segues into our next question. The Manchester Economic Development Office has been reborn thanks to money from the American Rescue Plan Act. When that money runs out, do you believe funding for that office should come out of the general fund or another source, or should that office be discontinued? Kevin, you're up first.
Thank you. Absolutely not. We've got to continue that office. I think when you look at the work Jody and Eric have done has been phenomenal. I think with the businesses all over the city benefit from that, the people of the city. I'm so impressed with their newsletter that comes out. If you're looking for something to do for a month in Manchester, go to that newsletter and you're going to find something to do. It's something we have to fund. I think it benefits business owners. I think it benefits taxpayers because it's bringing people to the city, and we have to continue that office.
We have that newsletter on Fridays on Inklink.
The Mito Minute.
We have the Mito Minute. Junior up next.
Yes. I think one of the best things we did was reinstate the Economic Development Office. It's definitely something a city of our side needs. The good news is I did work with several of the aldermen on the alderman's budget this year, and the Economic Development Office is part of our normal budget now. So they are a budgeted department. They will live another day, another year, and another several years while they do their job. Things that we have to look at, though, is how do we effectively grow that office? Because we put a lot on economic development right now. We put a lot on all of our departments. So again, it's going to come down to how do we continue to fund them? How do we continue to resource them properly so that we can expand as a city and keep things moving forward?
So I was walking downtown last week, and I saw a guy who was outside of his business that was about to open, and I asked him, hey, what was it like trying to work through the city to get your business up and running? And he told me, man, I felt like it was, it was a maze at some points. I wasn't sure exactly what to do, and then I called Eric, and he was able to get it fixed for me. He was able to give me exactly what I need. So I do think that this is an important function in the city, particularly of something, a city our size. Now, I would want to have the conversation with them, just like it would with any other department head, and say, okay, what are your needs? What does it look like to you, or what does your budget look like in the best case scenario? What are you able to do with what you're currently working on right now? Because I want to make sure that we are being responsible to the taxpayer, but I also want to make sure that this is a good thing for the city to have. Cities of comparable sizes do have this. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. Just when I talk to the business communities, when I go to the Rotary meetings, when I go to the Queen City Rotary, I was there a few weeks back, and they were telling me that they've never had engagement with the city like they have now. So I do think that this is an important function that they play.
Okay. Will?
I was certainly thrilled to see the Manchester Economic Development Office be reinstated after several years of being dormant, and certainly want to see that continue in perpetuity. And frankly, it needs to be expanded. The fact that, a city of our size, 115,000, the largest city in northern New England, has a Manchester Economic Development Office with all of 2 full-time staff, to me, it's a travesty. And, I get, maybe I'm a little biased coming from an economic development background myself, but, this is a true investment in the city, in the businesses, in building the wealth, of our community, is this office. And like any other investment, if I can give somebody $1 and get back $1.10, take all my money. It's an investment that pays itself back. It helps out the taxpayers. It makes our city more vibrant. So yes, let's keep the Manchester Economic Development Office. Let's grow the Manchester Economic Development Office.
Okay. Going back to public safety. The opioid epidemic has long been a concern in New Hampshire. What are we missing, and what initiatives as a mayor would you do to support the prevalence of drugs and addiction in the city? June, you're up. I think June, you're up first. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. We're going to be going so long, we've been losing track here. I'm sorry about that. So June's first on this one.
Okay. I think that's one of those challenges that if we could solve it here in Manchester, the rest of the nation would be indebted to us for that. I think what we have to keep doing is working with our health department, working at the state level, and starting to find solutions to help people get off of the streets and get off of the addiction. This isn't going to be, it's not going to be easy, but we have to start meeting people where they're at, and we have to start bringing them in. My hope is, with the engagement center, we will be able to bring people in, and we will be able to start working with them and find what they need for help and what's going to get them off the street. Our Gateway partnership has been working well with putting people into detox, and we're finding results that way as well. So it's going to be a lot more communication, continue coordinating with our partners in the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector, and make sure that we are addressing the needs and we're able to meet people where they're at, and we're able to help them through the addiction rather than using police force and incarcerating them because they have an addiction.
Jay, you're up next.
Yeah, so 2 things on this. This is a supply and it's a demand issue. On the supply side, we have to make sure that we are giving the police and first responders all the resources necessary to tackle this. That also means, like I said earlier, we have got to get violent criminals off of our streets, those who are participating in the drug trade. We cannot allow for this to continue happening in the city of Manchester. So ensuring that the supply side is cut down, that's imperative. Now, on the demand side, people who are struggling with addiction or mental health, the point there are 2 key points where people are at their most vulnerable for an overdose. It's when people are coming out of hospitals, and it's when they're coming out of jails. So working with our hospitals, working with our jails to strengthen the systems that they have there, and you will see a dramatic drop in the number of overdoses that we are having within our community to break that cycle of addiction. But then also in our schools. So if you are a child with high ACEs scores, adverse childhood experiences, if you have trauma in your life, statistically speaking, you are much more likely to go on to develop a mental health crisis or a mental health issue or a substance use disorder. We need to do more in our schools on the prevention side to, for lack of a better word, to arrest our way out of this problem before it becomes a problem later on in life. So I think it's on the supply side, we have to make sure we're giving police the resources that they need, being a full-throated supporter of bail reform, PR bail reform, to get our violent criminals off our street, and then attacking this where people are at their most vulnerable, coming out of jails, coming out of hospitals, and in our schools.
Will?
I do agree. This is a supply and demand issue. And certainly on the supply side, you're right. When it comes to the trafficking of opioids and other drugs, give no quarter, to those who are bringing, this and distributing this in our community, to those traffickers, to those distributors. We need to, pursue them. On the demand side, though, I think, we tend to focus, I think, almost exclusively sometimes, on the supply side and, treat this entire issue as a law enforcement issue. And it does have a component there, certainly. But on the user end, it's a demand issue. And I don't think we do enough looking in the mirror and asking, why are so many of our friends, our neighbors, our children, our relatives, feeling the need, to take opioids, to take these drugs? And I agree, it is a lot of the, adverse childhood experiences, and there are numerous touch points where people will get involved and start taking drugs. But I think we're doing a very poor job of not treating this as the public health epidemic that it is. So we certainly need, more folks who are working in this field too. And again, you talk about the attraction and retention of a workforce. Right now, we just simply do not have the infrastructure needed, for those people who want help, to be able to get it in a timely fashion sometimes, and certainly in a more permanent fashion. Thank you.
Kevin?
Thank you, Andy. It's prevention, addiction services, and mental health services. That's the start. We have to help people. It's a terrible, every one of us, I would imagine, if everyone would put their hands up if they know someone that's affected by this, I'm sure this whole room would have their hands up. It's heartbreaking, and we have to do more. And I agree. I worked with the governor on that bail reform in the original bill, and then we worked with him for 2 more years to try to get that passed, and we couldn't. We have to get violent people off the street. We have to get people dealing drugs off the street. The Republicans have the power in Concord to do that. In the past 2 years, they wouldn't do it. We have to get back. We have to beat that back. And I think, again, bringing people together is a start to do that. I worked with the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police Association, the Manchester Police Department, the New Hampshire Police Association, to get this back. It's something that's going to help all of us. We'll get services to people. We can't arrest our way out of this, and we have to give first the people addicted the services they need.
Okay. So far tonight, all the questions have been the same for all the candidates. This one is a little different. The question for Will, Kevin, and June, what are your top achievements on the Board of Mayor and Alderman? And for Jay, what are your top achievements as a private citizen in Manchester, since you've been in Manchester? Okay, this one will start with Jay.
So thank you so much. So for me, I think the thing that I'm most proud of from a professional sense is being an officer in the Army National Guard. So when I was a sophomore in high school, I watched as the towers fell, and I always wanted to join the Army. But because I had a substance use disorder problem and I got in some trouble, I was never able to join the military as a result of that. But I continued to try. I tried to get into big Army, I tried other National Guards, and I continued to be rejected. And finally, at the age of 35 years old, I had put together a good career. I had been working in nonprofits, helping people with addiction, mental health, and homelessness. I had already been sober at that point for 8 or 9 years, and I was finally able to get in. So being able to wear my country's uniform and going and working with good people like Sergeant Mike Avard right here in the crowd tonight, I'm very blessed and very fortunate to be able to serve my country, and I think that's my proudest professional achievement that I have.
Will, you're up next.
Thank you. So I'm currently in my 6th year as an alderman representing Ward 2, and have several things that I'm pretty proud of. One, I mentioned earlier, the complete transformation of Maple and Beach Streets, between Bridge and Webster. It was a pilot project that my colleagues were good enough to approve, again, that has reduced speeds, reduce crashes by half, and really increase the quality of life for the people who live on those streets. To me, to be able to help my neighbors in that way is very meaningful and really gives me life and energy. So has being able to enact a number of public-private partnerships and bring those, to Ward 2 and across the city. Being able to work with the AARP of New Hampshire to bring a fitness structure to Derryfield Park at no cost to taxpayers. To be able to work with Dartmouth Health to bring flashing speed indicator signs on Wellington Road, again, to bring down those speeds. Working with Alderman Fajardo, I see her in the audience tonight, and the Diocese of Manchester to be able to bring, flashing crosswalks, there at Bridge and Highland to help people get over to Hillside and to Derryfield Park. Again, super meaningful to me. And also working with James Veo, I see him out in the audience as well, to reduce that red tape, to make it easier for homeowners to build accessory dwelling units on their properties, increasing their property rights and helping to alleviate our city's housing crisis just a little bit. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin?
Thank you, Andy. I've got to say this. Last year, the mayor appointed me and voted on by the aldermen to lead the negotiations for city contracts. We had contract negotiations going on, stalling for 10 months. I was appointed, went in there. In 3 weeks, we had 13 tentative agreements. And that all respected the tax cap, but it also respected the city employees. Every one of these departments and under that contract worked through the shutdown. They were all getting our trash. They were fixing potholes. The health department was out there working. And we did this, but it's a way to respect the taxpayer. There was some give and take with it. The board voted bipartisan to support that. And we've gotten 3 and 4 year deals to give our employees some stability so we can really start looking at a compensation study to help attract and retain employees. And I think that's the first good step to do that, to make sure we are getting the best, continue to get the best employees and teachers that we have.
June?
Thank you. Probably is essentially the relative newbie since I'm in my first term as alderman at large. I think probably the most important thing to know is anything that happens on the board of mayor and aldermen is a team effort. Nothing is done by one person. There's no I did this, I did that, I did that. It's building a consensus. It's working together to do it. I think my favorite things in being alderman at large and being able to view things citywide is the ability to put different communities together and being present with the different community members in their community groups and strengthening their community groups, helping them find the funding, helping them find the grants when they want to take a small park on the corner of a street that was meaningless to everybody until someone went out and beautified it, working with the various community groups on their cleanup efforts. We've done more to get community members involved in helping us in, I think, the past year and a half that I've been on the board than I've seen before. And then that's my greatest pleasure, is being able to support that. We're doing some work now on expanding some of the rail corridors and some of the bike trails on the inner city where we have people who bicycling is their basic mode of transportation, and we need to have a safe travel path for them as well. And I do want to say, Jay, thank you for your service. I think it's a testament that you stuck it out and you kept trying, because far too often people that have had a former addiction, people that have been incarcerated, people that have done something in their earlier days, it's too much of a challenge for them to get on the straight and narrow and do something. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And it looks like I lied a little bit. We are actually on time, so we are at the closing discussions of our night here. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and thank you to our crowd. Please give yourselves a round of applause. And thank you for helping me through my first debate here. We have our closing remarks. Every candidate gets 2 marks. Judy, if you give them 2 minutes, we will start with Jay. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. We start with. Sorry. We start with Will. Excuse me. I apologize. You were first and the last one. Sorry, Will, you're first. I apologize. No, Will, you're first. I apologize.
So one of the things that's interesting about this year's election, and it's the first time that it's happened since 2009, is there is no incumbent running for mayor. One of us on this stage will be the next mayor of Manchester. And one of the things I like that having kind of this open field is that, first of all, it's been pretty positive so far. And I like that. We all get to talk about, our respective visions for Manchester, our ideas, our different approaches on how we might tackle some of Manchester's, biggest issues. But I will say that, again, while we definitely need a leader with a vision, Manchester's challenges require a manager with a plan and who can actually get results. And those of you who know me have probably heard me say that one of my favorite expressions is, don't tell me what you'll do, show me what you've done. And I think that right now, at this point in Manchester's history, with all of the challenges that we face, we need a tried and trusted city leader who's also the manager and CEO who can get those results. I spoke a few minutes ago of the many results that I'm proud of. During my tenure as an alderman, I mentioned some of the things previously that I'd done even before being in office, all in service of Manchester. So if you want a mayor who will get results for the betterment of the city, I ask for your vote on Tuesday, September 19th. Thank you.
Thank you. Just like I started, I love the city is why I'm running. And I think you can look at the results I've had as 8 years as an alderman in Manchester, 6 years as a state senator, and it's all because the community members have voted for me. You don't get those results by just putting yourself in a lane and going forward. You have to work with people. I've learned that as a negotiator, as a union negotiator, my career. When I started when I was 19, got involved with my union, and you form relationships. A manager once told me, he said, if it's easy if I don't like you to say no. It's tough to say no to a friend. And that's what we have to do. I do love this forum. I have some great respect for the conversation we had tonight. But we have to look at the future of Manchester, and we have to come together. And I will work with anyone to get the results for Manchester. It's where I was born, my kids were born, and I want to fix the problems we have because I want my kids to stay, and I want them to have their kids, our grandkids here. And there's a great sense of pride that I have in this city, and I want to spread it throughout the state. I want to spread it throughout New England, and I will use the relationships I've had, again, within the city government, in the state government, to make sure any problem we have, we do it together. And again, because we can fix anything when we work together.
Okay. I think one of the resounding themes that you're going to get from all of us and probably from all of you sitting out there is we are a city of potential. We have some great things happening. However, if we don't address the housing crisis, if we don't make our streets safer, and we don't continue to build our workforce, we have an uncertain future. We need to care not only for our elderly residents and make sure that we're embracing activities, having places to keep them safe, working with them to help them with their property taxes and the rising costs that they're facing, but we also need to create opportunities that welcome and keep our next generation in our city and not make our younger generation our biggest export. I understand the importance of working collaboratively and empowering our city employees and community partners to meet our goals and get things done. I will be ready to start the job on day one. I will leverage my experience as a public school teacher, a software company executive, a small business owner, and currently serving as your alderman at large to make those plans, to work on those strategic plans, and to move the city forward. I have the experience to lead large, diverse, collaborative teams. I will be bringing innovative ideas, and I will be listening to our city employees who we need to empower more, who have some great ideas, and we need to bring those all to the table, and we need to create plans that are sustainable and beneficial to our community. With the right relationships and with common sense solutions, we can overcome any challenge we face in Manchester. We've proven that we're resilient. If you just look at our mill yard and the history over the years and all the time I've grown up in Manchester and the stories from my family, we are resilient. We get knocked down, we come back even stronger every time. I am going to work hard and overcome all of the challenges together, and we're going to create a stronger, more affordable, and equitable Manchester. I hope to earn your vote on September 19th, and I know we've got a little time after, so if anybody has any additional questions, feel free to flag me down.
Now it's your turn.
I'm not cutting ahead this time.
Sorry about that. Right. Sorry, Will. I apologize.
Well, firstly, thank you, Will, Kevin, June, and all of you for being here this evening. I really appreciated the opportunity to share the last 2 hours with you. So I agree. Manchester is a city that has a great deal of promise and potential. When I talk to residents around the city, to business owners, to people who are in our community, nonprofits, they all feel the same way, that Manchester's brightest days could be ahead. What I worry about, though, is that we have a growing homeless crisis in the city. We have problems with public safety, and I worry that if we do not address these quality of life issues, there is going to be a reverberating impact through the balance of our city, both on economic development and bringing residents into the city. And so I worry about the ripple on the pond effect that's going to happen if we don't solve these problems. And I think if you look in my background, having worked in nonprofits with addiction, mental health, and homelessness, having to be a leader in the military, I think that those are important attributes to have if we're going to solve the biggest challenges that we do have. And I think it's essential that we bring the community together, that we are listening, that we are being responsive, that the mayor plays a leadership role in this. One of the things that I first learned being an officer is that everything that your platoon does or fails to do is on you. We have to be accountable as the mayor. We have to take ownership and responsibility for the challenges that we have. And it starts with recognizing that there's a problem and then working together collaboratively to fix it. So that's why yesterday I put forward my plan to fix the homeless crisis. I would encourage you to go take a look at that. But we do not have to agree on everything, but we do have to agree that the status quo on some of these challenges cannot stand. So I would ask for your support if you're looking for somebody with fresh ideas, somebody who is outside or off of the Board of Mayor and Alderman wants to bring some fresh, bold ideas to the city. I would ask for your support. Thank you.
And that does it. Carol has an announcement. Carol, take it away.
Not really an announcement. I'm just so excited. This was a great night. I had a great time. I hope you did too. I really want to thank each of you, Will, Kevin, June, and Jay, for your participation. Very well prepared. I know 90 seconds isn't a lot, but I think it was enough for people to get an idea of what you bring to the party. So let's keep the party going. Speaking of party, we have the real deal is going to come back out and dazzle you with some more jazz. We have a bit more food to eat, and like I said, I really can't eat it all myself, so please don't rush off. I'm talking to you people rushing off. I really, really appreciate everybody coming out. Yeah, I love you too. Thank you, and I'm glad we stuck to the time, so you have some time to enjoy with your friends and neighbors. And please give us some feedback on Facebook. We have an open thread. Tell us what you like, tell us who you like, tell us why. Thank you. And Andy, yes. Let's hear it for Andy. Thank you. Oh, yes, if you guys want to have an official handshake, I have a photographer here who would love to capture that on film. It's just a staged photo.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you. That was fun.
Sorry about that.
No, it's good.